me ask you something. If a stranger walked up to you on the street every morning and whispered, "You're not good enough. You always mess it up. You'll never make it," what would you do? Most people would walk away. Some would get angry. But what if I told you that most people hear this every day, not from strangers, but from themselves? We don't like to call it brainwashing. That sounds too dark, too manipulative. But brainwashing at its core is just repetition. It's the repeated exposure to a belief until it becomes accepted as truth. And the tragedy is, most people are brainwashed already, just in the wrong direction. We grow up absorbing ideas we never question. Ideas like, "You're too quiet to lead," or "You're not smart enough to succeed," or "People like us don't do things like that." These ideas don't come with a warning label. They arrive quietly, slip into our thoughts, and take root. And before long, they become part of the way we see ourselves. That's the real danger. Not that someone else lies to you, but that you start lying to yourself. But here's the good news. If it's possible to brainwash ourselves in the wrong direction, it's also possible to brainwash ourselves toward success. And the first step is to rewrite the script playing in your mind. Every day we wake up, and often unconsciously, we hit play on the same old mental track. You're behind. You're stuck. You're not ready. And we listen. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. And that's the trick. Your brain will always prefer familiar over true. So what if, instead, you replaced those words with something better, something intentional, something designed? Try saying, "I show up even when I'm scared," or "I solve problems under pressure." These aren't fake affirmations. These are declarations. You don't say them because they're true. You say them until they become true. Speak your future into the present, not to impress others, but to remind yourself of what you're capable of. Now, most people think success is about doing big things once in a while, but it's not. Success is what happens when you do small things consistently, even when no one's watching. That's why the second principle is to build rituals that support who you want to become. Think about it. Every successful person you admire doesn't rise and fall by chance. They have systems. They have routines. Not because they love rules, but because they know freedom comes through structure. They don't wake up every morning hoping for motivation. They've designed their days so they don't need it. The key here is discipline. Not in the military sense, but in the self-respect sense. When you show up for yourself every day, even when you don't feel like it, you build trust in your future. And when you trust yourself, you do more, risk more, and become more. But it doesn't stop there. Your mind is always scanning your environment for clues. Clues about what matters, what's normal, what's expected. So if your space is cluttered with distractions and your life is filled with people who drain you, your brain is getting the wrong message. That's why the third way to reprogram your mind for success is to consciously shape your environment. Want to think clearer? Surround yourself with people who already think that way. Want to dream bigger? Surround yourself with people who already think that way. Want to stay hungry? Listen to voices that challenge you instead of comfort you. The people you text, the videos you watch, the stories you hear, they are all shaping your perception of what's possible. Guard your inputs like you guard your goals. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Now let's talk about obsession, but not the unhealthy kind. I'm talking about a deep, focused obsession with process, with the work, with the habits. Too many people set a goal and then attach their identity to the outcome. I'll be successful when I hit this number. I'll be worthy when I reach that rank. But what happens when you don't? You crumble. Instead, train your brain to love the effort. Celebrate the practice. Reward yourself not for reaching the mountain, but for taking another step. When you do that, failure doesn't destroy you, it builds you. Because you're not just chasing a goal, you're becoming the kind of person who doesn't quit. And that brings us to the final and maybe most difficult principle. Ruthless optimism. Not naive hope, not positive thinking painted on a negative reality. I'm talking about the choice, the daily, deliberate choice to see every challenge as an invitation. To believe that no matter what happens, you can adapt, evolve, and overcome. People think optimism is about feeling good. It's not. It's about choosing to believe you are more powerful than your circumstances. That the storm isn't a sign to turn back, it's proof you're going in the right direction. When you adopt that mindset, every failure becomes feedback, every setback becomes training, and every delay becomes preparation. You begin to see that success isn't some magic moment in the future. It's something you build one thought, one habit, one decision at a time. So let's come back to the idea of brainwashing. It's not a question of whether you're being brainwashed. It's a question of by whom and for what purpose. You can either continue to let the world program your mind with noise, doubt, fear, or you can start writing your own code. The choice is yours, but make no mistake. Success isn't something that just happens. It's something you prepare your mind to accept, to pursue, and to sustain. You want to succeed? Then teach your brain how. Because once you do, success doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. There's this common belief we hold that successful people have more motivation than the rest of us, that they wake up excited every single morning, inspired, energized, ready to conquer the day. That they have something we don't. But that belief is wrong. The difference isn't motivation, it's ritual. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes, like the wind. It's unpredictable, it's emotional, it's fleeting. You can't build a life on it. You can't build a business, a dream, a legacy on something that's here one day and gone the next. Ritual, on the other hand, is a decision. It's structure. It's intentional. And it's repeatable. When motivation is nowhere to be found, ritual shows up. And that's what separates people who live lives of impact from those who only talk about it. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. Think about it. How do world-class athletes keep performing at the highest level even on their worst days? How do great leaders still make decisions in the middle of pressure, uncertainty, and fatigue? They don't rely on feeling good. They rely on what they've practiced. That's what self-discipline actually is. It's not forcing yourself to do something with clenched fists and gritted teeth. It's creating a system around your values that makes success easier to repeat. Let's break this down in human terms. Every person alive today is a creature of habit. You already follow rituals, you just might not be aware of them. Maybe your ritual is waking up, checking your phone, scrolling through other people's lives before even living your own. Maybe it's hitting snooze 3 times and telling yourself you'll try again tomorrow. Maybe it's binge watching something late into the night and dragging your body into a new day with no real energy to live it. And over time, those unconscious rituals shape your identity, and your identity shapes your behavior, and your behavior shapes your results. What if you flipped that? What if, instead of rituals that distract, numb, or delay, you designed rituals that energize, prepare, and align you? That's the real power of self-discipline. It's not about punishment, it's about preparation. Discipline is how you train your body and mind to serve your future, not sabotage it. Imagine starting your day not by reacting, but by creating. Not by being pulled by notifications, but by leading with intention. Imagine having simple but non-negotiable practices that make you feel grounded before the chaos begins. It could be 10 minutes of journaling, a cold shower, a morning walk, a power playlist, reading 1 page of something that inspires you. It doesn't need to be elaborate, it needs to be consistent, because consistency creates confidence. People ask, how do I become more confident? Start showing up for yourself when no one is clapping. Start keeping promises to yourself when no one is watching. Every time you say, I'll do it, and then you do, that's a brick. And brick by brick, you build something that can't be knocked over by a bad day. Discipline also teaches you something else. That discomfort is not your enemy. In fact, it's your teacher. You begin to realize that pushing through resistance doesn't break you, it builds you. It builds resilience. It builds focus. It builds grit. And the more you do it, the more you start to crave the feeling that used to scare you. Success becomes less about being in the mood and more about being in alignment. And here's what's really fascinating. The more disciplined your life becomes, the more freedom you actually gain. That sounds backwards, but it's not. Discipline sets you free from the trap of procrastination, from the burden of regret, from the emotional roller coaster of waiting to feel ready. When you ritualize discipline, you take decision fatigue off the table. You don't wake up wondering, should I do the work today? You just do it, because it's part of who you are now. This shift rewires your brain to seek structure instead of chaos, to value effort over ease, to live for long-term fulfillment instead of short-term comfort. And make no mistake, comfort is seductive. Comfort whispers, take it easy, you've done enough, you can start tomorrow. But comfort is a liar. It sells you pleasure and leaves you with emptiness. Discipline, on the other hand, is quiet. It doesn't beg for attention, but it delivers results that compound every day you show up. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's worth it. You will have days when you don't feel like doing the work. Do it anyway. You will be tired. You will be discouraged. You will question why you're even bothering. Do it anyway. Not because you're a machine, but because you're becoming someone who no longer negotiates with mediocrity. The rituals you build become anchors. In times of stress, they give you stability. In times of doubt, they give you clarity. In times of fear, they remind you of who you are. So here's the real challenge. What small, repeatable rituals can you create today that your future self will thank you for? Start small, start simple, start now. Because the person you want to become isn't waiting at the top of the mountain. They're built in the climb, in the quiet, in the dark, in the ordinary moments when you choose discipline over distraction. And once that choice becomes your rhythm becomes your reputation. And that's how success shows up, not as a one-time event, but as the inevitable result of daily rituals you refused to abandon. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself, it's about aligning yourself. So align, act, and repeat until excellence becomes your new normal. You don't become what you wish for, you become what surrounds you. Look around. Your environment is constantly shaping you even when you're not aware of it. And most people go through life reacting to their surroundings, never realizing they have the power to design them. They let other people's noise become their soundtrack. They let chaos become their baseline. They let their space, their influences, their inputs, program them by default instead of by design. Here's what most people don't understand. Your brain is always scanning for patterns. It looks for cues about what matters, what's normal, what's expected, and where you place yourself. Physically, mentally, socially, sends a signal to your brain about what to value. So if you want to change your life, you have to change the signals. That begins with owning the truth. Your environment isn't just the backdrop of your life, it's the invisible hand guiding it. When you sit in clutter, you think in clutter. When you walk into a room filled with distraction, your focus fractures. When you spend your days listening to people who complain, criticize, or compare, you slowly adopt their language, their energy, their rhythm. You might think you're immune to it, but you're not. No one is, because the environment always wins. That's why success isn't just about discipline or desire, it's about alignment. You can have the strongest goals, the best plan, the clearest vision, but if your environment isn't designed to support that vision, your effort will always feel like a battle. It's like planting a seed in concrete and wondering why it never grows. The seed isn't broken, the soil is. So the question becomes, what kind of environment are you planting yourself in? Think of the people you interact with daily. Do they elevate you or do they drain you? Do they challenge your thinking or reinforce your fears? Do they believe in your growth or constantly remind you of your limitations? You don't rise alone. No one does. You either grow with the people around you or you shrink with them. That doesn't mean cutting everyone out. It means becoming intentional about influence. It means recognizing that every voice you allow close to you has power. Every conversation leaves a residue. And over time, those small imprints become belief systems. The same goes for what you consume. Your content diet is as important as your food diet. What you listen to, watch, scroll through. It all feeds your mindset. If you're constantly feeding your brain drama, outrage, or shallow noise, don't be surprised when your thinking becomes reactive, anxious, or scattered. Curate your inputs. Guard your focus. Choose content that stretches you, not just entertains you. Choose stories that inspire possibility, not just stories that confirm your fears. Every piece of input is a brick in the house you're building inside your mind. Even your physical space matters more than you think. Look at your workspace, your bedroom, your home. Is it set up for distraction or creation? Is it a place that calms your mind or clutters it? You don't need fancy furniture or expensive tools. You need simplicity. You need order. You need clarity. Design your space to reflect your priorities. If growth is your goal, make sure it's easy to reach for a book. If focus is your goal, remove the noise. If wellness is your goal, don't make it hard to find what energizes you. Small shifts matter. Big environments, or change one detail at a time. And here's something powerful. When you start shaping your environment intentionally, it also starts shaping you back. You stop having to rely on willpower to do the right thing, because the right thing becomes the easy thing. It becomes your default, not your struggle. This is where most people get it wrong. They assume success requires constant resistance, always pushing against friction. They also assume that resistance radically alters the function. But the smart move isn't just pushing harder, it's designing better. It's making success the path of least resistance. When the gym is 5 minutes away, you go more often. When your phone is in another room, you read more. When you see your goals written on your wall every morning, you stay aligned without needing to feel inspired every second of the day. It's not about making yourself stronger, it's about making your surroundings smarter. And here's the beautiful part. Once you reprogram your environment, you reprogram your identity. Because over time, you begin to internalize the new signals. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying to improve and start seeing yourself as someone who does improve. You stop being someone who should stay disciplined and become someone who just is disciplined. The shift is subtle, but it's everything. Your environment doesn't just reflect who you are, it reflects who you're becoming. So if you're trying to step into a new version of yourself, look around. Ask yourself, does this space reflect who I want to be? Do these people reflect the mindset I want to carry? Do the voices I listen to reflect the values I stand for? If not, it's time to do some editing. That doesn't make you selfish, it makes you strategic. You're not rejecting others, you're protecting your potential. Because if you're not deliberate about what surrounds you, you'll be shaped by accident. And that's too high a price to pay. The truth is, you don't have to wait for the perfect circumstances to build the life you want. You just have to create the conditions. You have more control than you think. You don't need to force change. You need to create a place where change feels natural. Success doesn't begin with a goal. It begins with a space that nurtures the person you're trying to become. So look around and build it. Because once your environment starts reflecting your future instead of your past, everything else starts to align. You'll think differently. And without realizing it, you'll start becoming the kind of person you once thought only existed in your imagination. Not because you forced yourself, but because you designed a world where that person could finally grow. Everyone wants to win, everyone wants the result, but very few are willing to fall in love with the work it takes to get there. It's become easy to believe that success is a moment, that it's a finish line you cross, a number you hit, a trophy you hold. And while those things can be meaningful, they're not what shape you. The outcome is the reward, but the process is the transformation. The truth is, if the only thing that drives you is the outcome, you'll give up the moment it doesn't show up fast enough. And let's be honest, it rarely shows up fast. Progress isn't instant. Growth isn't visible right away. It's slow, frustrating, invisible work. That's why so many people quit. They chase a result and forget to build a mindset. But those who thrive, they build their identity in the process, not in the win. See, when you tie your value to the outcome, you're setting yourself up for a fragile kind of motivation. I'll feel good when I get there. I'll be proud when I make it. I'll feel like I matter once I've proven myself. That way of thinking turns success into a moving target, always just out of reach, always tied to something external. The problem with external validation is that it's addictive. The moment you get it, you need more. And the moment you lose it, you doubt everything. You begin to question your worth, your purpose, your direction. That's not sustainable. But when your identity is rooted in process, in doing the work, learning the skill, showing up even when it's inconvenient, success becomes something you carry with you, not something you chase. You stop asking, am I there yet? And start asking, am I becoming better than I was yesterday? There's a kind of confidence that only comes from consistency. Not the kind you post about, not the kind that impresses people in the moment, but the quiet kind. The kind that gets built on ordinary Tuesdays when nobody's watching and you still choose to show up. That's what the process gives you, integrity with yourself. The greatest freedom is knowing you don't need a crowd to be committed. People often ask, what's the secret to staying consistent? And the answer is this: don't fall in love with the goal. Fall in love with the habit. Goals are useful for direction, but habits are what build direction into reality. You don't rise to your ambitions, you fall to your routines. It's easy to be passionate when things are exciting, when you're starting something new, when progress feels visible. But what happens when it gets boring? What happens when it gets repetitive? What happens when nobody cares? That's when you find out who's committed to the process and who is only committed to the outcome. Excellence is boring. It's the repetition of the fundamentals, done with relentless attention. It's waking up early to do the same thing again. It's showing up when no one's clapping. It's doing it better, slower, deeper. Not because someone told you to, but because you care. There's power in that kind of ownership. It teaches you to enjoy the discipline itself, not just what the discipline might lead to. And when you enjoy the discipline, you become dangerous in the best possible way. Because now you don't need the applause, you don't need the shortcut, you don't even need the result to keep going. You've become process-driven. You stop being desperate for results and start becoming devoted to mastery. And here's the irony: when you obsess over the process instead of the prize, the results tend to show up anyway. Because your focus isn't scattered, your energy isn't split. You're not wasting time fantasizing about the future, you're fully planted in the present. The world tells you to dream big, and you should. But dreaming big means nothing if you don't act small, daily, repeatedly, consistently. The dream is only possible when the process becomes the priority. People who win long term don't rely on luck, they rely on momentum. And momentum is earned, not given. It's earned in the late nights when you study one more page, in the early mornings when you practice one more rep, in the uncomfortable moments when you choose growth over ease. This is where identity starts to shift. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to succeed. You see yourself as someone who does the work. You become proud, not because of where you're going, but because of how you're getting there. It's not that you stop setting goals, you just stop depending on them to feel good about yourself. You realize that every day you give your best is a win. Even when you're tired, even when it's messy, even when nobody notices. That's the difference between external success and internal fulfillment. Because at some point, the applause fades, the results plateau, the hype dies down, and all that's left is the work. The question is, did you love the work enough to keep going? That's what the process gives you. Stability, grounding, and purpose. When you train your brain to love the process, you build a kind of mental armor. You stop being shaken by every setback. You stop fearing failure. You even start to welcome it, not because it feels good, but because you know it means you're in motion. You start living by a new equation: progress over perfection, effort over ego, consistency over convenience. That is what reprogramming for success looks like. Not trying harder, but thinking differently. So no, don't obsess over the scoreboard. Don't obsess over whether you're ahead or behind. That's not where the magic is. The magic is in the reps no one sees. The hours you don't post. The work you do when it's not urgent but still important. That's where identity is built. That's where character is tested. That's where real success is born. Because when you fall in love with the process, you stop needing permission to be great. You just get up and you build it. There's a belief we all carry, whether we acknowledge it or not, that our attitude doesn't really change the outcome, that life will be what it will be regardless of how we feel about it, that optimism is nice but not necessary, and maybe even a little naive. But that belief is dead wrong, because the way you see the world determines the way you engage with it. Your mindset doesn't just color your experience, it shapes your decisions, your resilience, your action. And if you're serious about becoming successful, whatever that means to you, then you have to take your mindset seriously. Optimism isn't a personality trait. It's a strategy. It's the decision to see possibility where others see limitation. It's the ability to look at a setback and say, this isn't the end. This is data. It's the habit of believing that there's always a move to make, even when the path isn't clear. And it's not soft, it's not blind positivity, it's not pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Ruthless optimism means you're willing to see reality for what it is, but you refuse to surrender to it. It's gritty. It's defiant. It's courageous. Because anyone can be optimistic when things are going well, when the numbers are up, the feedback is positive, the doors are opening. That doesn't take strength, that's just observation. But the real test is what you do when it's not working, when the door closes, when the plan falls apart, when nothing is going your way. That's the moment when most people stop. They rationalize, maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe I'm just not ready. Maybe someone like me doesn't get to have this. But the people who break through, the ones who build something that lasts, they don't interpret failure as final. They interpret it as instruction. They don't take problems personally. They take them as puzzles. That's ruthless optimism. It's the practice of seeing every challenge as a chance to become better, to evolve, to stretch beyond what you thought was your limit. It's not rooted in delusion. It's rooted in responsibility. Because optimism doesn't guarantee success, but pessimism guarantees limitation. When you believe things won't work out, you stop trying. You shrink. You protect. You hesitate. And that hesitation becomes a habit. And that habit becomes your identity. And before you know it, you're no longer failing. You're hiding. We've all done it. We've all had those moments where we settle, not because we're incapable, but because we stopped believing the future could be better than the past. That's the most dangerous kind of defeat, the one that lives in your mind long before it shows up in your life. But here's the truth. You were never meant to coast. You were built to rise. You were made to adapt. That's what makes optimism so powerful. It honors that part of you. Ruthless optimism doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you don't bow to it. Fear whispers, what if you fail? Optimism responds, then I'll learn faster. Fear says, what if they reject you? Optimism answers, then I'll find the ones who won't. Fear asks, what if you're not good enough? Optimism replies, then I'll grow until I am. It's a decision you make over and over to not let fear write your story. Now, some people confuse optimism with passivity. They think it means waiting around, trusting the universe, hoping things magically fall into place. That's not optimism. That's avoidance dressed up in spiritual language. Real optimism moves, it plans, it acts, it persists, it works harder when others quit. Optimism is fuel for grit. Because when you believe the effort is worth it, you keep going, even when it's dark, even when you're tired, even when there's no applause. And let me say this clearly. There will be days when you want to give up, when the weight feels too heavy. When progress is invisible. That doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. Optimism doesn't deny the struggle, it reminds you that the struggle is part of the path. That mindset, when practiced consistently, starts to rewire everything. You begin to talk differently. You catch yourself before slipping into complaint. You find energy in progress instead of perfection. You learn to ask better questions. Not why is this happening to me, but what is this teaching me? Not how do I make it easier, but how do I get stronger? You stop seeing obstacles as signs you should quit and start seeing them as invitations to grow. And slowly, something shifts. You stop needing guarantees to take action. You stop needing certainty before making a move. You begin to trust that whatever happens, you can handle it. Not because you're fearless, but because you're flexible. That's what ruthless optimism builds, self-trust. And self-trust is what gives you the courage to do the hard things, to step up, to take risks, to believe that your future is not dictated by your circumstances, but by your choices. Because no one succeeds without doubt. No one builds something meaningful without resistance. No one escapes failure, but what separates the few from the many is their ability to move forward with belief intact. They see a wall and ask, how do I climb it? Not, why is it here? They hear no and ask, what's next? Not, what's wrong with me? They fall down and say, again. Not, I'm done. That is the mindset of someone who's brainwashed themselves for success, not to ignore reality, but to face it with resilience. So the real question isn't, will life be hard? It will. The real question is, when it is, what will you believe? Because that belief, your core, practiced daily belief, will become your compass. And with it, even the most uncertain road can become a path forward. So choose optimism, not the soft, surface kind, but the bold kind. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that says, I am not done yet. The kind that keeps building even when it would be easier to stop. Because success isn't about never falling. It's about what you decide to believe when you do. And if you believe in what you're building, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when it's lonely, then success won't be a matter of if, it'll just be a matter of when.